Right, hello. Today we're going to be doing a video on creating a form, a very simple form component. What's good about this form is that it's nice and responsive. So when you change screen size down to a mobile, for example, um, then it adjusts it nicely using some Flex CSS code. Also, it's very reusable as well. I've created it in such a way to make it very reusable. So if I go to another page on this is a website that I'm working for a client. If you're interested in wanting a website and having website built in with some kind of back end power, then drop me a comment or something like that. I'll be able to help out. But on their bookings page, as you can see, it's the same form in terms of styling, but we've got a far greater amount of input options because, of course, it serves a different purpose. Now, this is done with kind of no extra code. It's using the same component that we have and just just giving it new inputs, and it's outputting a very sleek looking, simple form. Now, another thing that's going to be happening is we're going to be connecting it to a Firebase database. So Firebase is a really great bit of software provided by Google. Well, I think Firebase is kind of their own kind of sub company of it. But essentially, this is going to be our database, and we're going to interact with Firebase in a very nice, clean, easy way using their software developer kit to create a bit more power inside our website and allow the things for forms to be handled and data to be processed. Right, so before we actually get into the component side of things, building the component, I do just want to say that I will be releasing some new Hedera Hashgraph content. I have a project of my own, which I'm going to be using the Hedera Hashgraph's JavaScript software developer kit, and I'm going to be kind of creating videos as I go on throughout that. The idea is about trying to incentivize recycling by tokenizing people's recycling, exchanging tokens for their recycling, and then once I am able to sell on the recycling and make use of that, I'll then buy back the tokens or something along those lines. And I'll be using the Hedera Hashgraph to try accomplish that. But yeah, so I've just created a form, just created a folder called form. Doesn't matter what the folder is called. I'm sure most people watching that know that. But yeah, I've just called it form, and we're going to be doing npx create -react -app just to get a template of a React app. I've been using Next for my own websites, but obviously Next is kind of a framework built on top of the React library. And I'm just going to put a dot because I want it to be created in the current directory that I'm in. So while that's just loading up, I'm going to pause and I'll get back to you in a bit. Right, so that's all been downloaded and initialized. So we end up with this app.js file, which is where just kind of the template stuff's in now. We're not interested really in any of this, so I'm just going to delete all of that. Going to delete that, going to delete this app.test.js stuff. Never used it before, don't really know what it is. Report web vitals, don't need to do that. To be honest, you probably can just go into and go straight away, but I just have the habit of deleting everything. This we can enter it in React strict mode. I think one small difference between having React strict mode on or not on, we need to delete that, is that for some reason use effect hooks get called twice when you're using React strict mode. I don't really know why, but I've just read one time before that is the case. So I have discovered that use effect hooks, they always do execute twice when the page is started in. I'm going to link some videos to some good use effect hooks videos below because they're very good to understand when it comes to React. Now, in terms of what we're going to be building, we're just going to be building a form. So to begin with, we'll just focus on the HTML side or the JSX side, and then we'll do the stylings, and then we will connect it with Firebase. That will be the final step. Now, it's going to be a component because we want it to be reusable. So I'm just going to create a new folder called components. This is just typically what I would do when writing a website, and then I'd create a forms document. So forms.js is the name. Now, using this short script RAFC, we can get a get this drafted up for us quickly now. One thing that I want to mention is that I've just installed this attachment. What's it called? It's called Kite, something like Kite. Let's see where it is. Yeah, so it's just basically like an AI thing which actually understands what you're doing to code and then gives you suggestions recommended based on how you type yourself. So, I don't know, it's quite, they'll obviously be collecting a lot of data, perhaps making some superhuman robot coding bot, but it makes my life easier. So in this forms component, we're just going to be having a form tag. That will be kind of the most outermost of our JSX components. And we need to think about how to build this so that it can be reused in other applications. Like I showed in the beginning of the video, there was 2 instances on that site where I've used it. And the way that we can make it reusable is by having as much information dynamically inputted. Now that means not having it written in here, rather using props and then passing it through the site that the web page that we want to use it in. So we basically want to think, okay, what information do we need to pass through? Now, I think the first thing I did when thinking about building this component is I just looked at the basic single kind of a single input box, and typically at the top of a form, it's your name. So it'd be label. And then the for in the label is going to be whatever it's for. So it's going to be for the name. And then we're just going to label it as name. Below that will be our input. Now the input, we'll give it an ID. We're not going to be using it, to be honest. So it's going to have an ID of name. It's also going to have a type of text. It could also have a type of number. It could have a type of email. It could have a type of telephone. It can do. It can have a type of tel. Can have a type, many different types. So it's going to have ID that. It's going to have a type, and it's also going to have its own name. I believe it's going to have its own name, which we'll also just call name. And that's it for the time being. Now, if I save all of this, this is going to be very, very ugly. I'm going to then go into my app.js. I'm now going to import that form. Import form. I've automatically done it from component / form. Recommending this kite thing, but it doesn't seem to be doing me any favors at the moment. I think that also needs to be like this. There we go. Right. That's easy way. Okay. So we're going to then be calling that inside here, form, and we'll npm start. And there we go. We have on our very plain page, we've got our name and we've got an input of type text, which we can then, type anything that we want inside it. So let's get back to this component. Now, the reason why I did one test input field is to see what bits we need to dynamically inject and what bits we can reuse. Now, as you can see, we've got 3 kind of parts of this individual block, of this individual input field. We've got the name, which in this instance is name, annoyingly. Well, not annoyingly. But this can be one dynamically injected variable. Another one can be the actual label itself. So this is going to be different to the other examples because we want it to be capitalized. We want it to be user-friendly. Now, finally, the third one is going to be the type, the text. So again, the text may vary. Sometimes we might have a name of mobile number or just mobile. Now the type will also be, I think, tel, but this would be mobile. Mobile is a bad example. Let's think about location. So it's going to be location, 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 location with a capital L, but type text or type geopoint, whatever type you want. So we're going to be needing to get a prop which has this type of data. Now, what would be even better is if we can have an array of these different items, and that would then mean we can then kind of just print, say we want 5 input fields, we'll have an array with 5 objects which can then just be looped through and output it onto this screen. Now I'm just gonna copy and paste what I've done before and explain bit by bit, break it down what's been happening. So first of all, I added into the component that we're going to be receiving a prop called form data. There's 2 ways you could do it. You can either type in the variable props in there, but there's a better way. You can actually, so this props is an object, and you can actually abstract this object, and one of the properties within that object is going to be the form data. I know that because I'm going to be coding it, and we can just extract it abstractly using this way, and then we can just call the variable straight away. So we're going to be saying form data.map, and that's going to be it's going to have a callback function with these 2 variables. It's going to have the item in question, the item of the array, and the index of that particular item. So first and foremost, when we're writing JSX, then we always need to have one outermost container. So we're going to be wrapping everything inside this mapping into a div, and it's going to have a key of the index. This is because all React React iterations need to have a key. It's just something that React asks for. So it's going to have this key here. It's also then inside it, it's going to have a label, and it's going to have the input field. Now, I'm just going to again copy it from my previously done stuff, and we'll look at it line by line. So the label, this is the name equivalent of over here. So my website's updated, and now there's nothing showing on it. Essentially, in the previous little bit of HTML that I wrote, the label was the bit at the top describing what the input is for. HTML4 as opposed to the lowercase FOR, which I used initially, that's for normal HTML. Now this is going to be the item label, so that would be the capital NAME, for example, the item name, lowercase name, and that's going to be the same for the ID of the input and the name of the input. I've also added this thing called required, so if this is true or false, then it means that the input itself will be required. Now, there's one thing which I've done, which I haven't kind of spoken about yet, and that's this ternary operation here. Ternary operation is when we've got 3 kind of components, and if this is true, the first condition will run. If this is false, then the second condition will run. It's basically an if-else statement written quite succinctly. Now, what I've done here is that there is an option, there is a type in HTML forms called text area. A text area is a slightly bigger 1-line text input. Now, of course, a text area has its own benefits. So there's because it's its own HTML tag, I can't really think of a better way to make it responsive and make it not responsive, to make it reusable, without saying if the item type we've inputted is text area, then output text area. For everything else, use the input tag with type input type, and the input type would be something other than text area. So this is kind of the template of it. There's not going to be any stylings to it yet, but there will eventually. So I'm just going to save that, and in our actual app page, we've still got our form here, but as you can see, when we go to the website, there's nothing being displayed. It's because we haven't actually passed any of the props into this variable of ours. So we're going to have to do this ourselves here, but that's not an issue at all. So it's called form data, Now it's an array. We're going to be iterating through it, and it's an array of objects. It's an object which has a name, which, for example, we'll call a name. It's going to have a label, which will be, name is going to be lowercase m, A-M-E, and the label is going to be an uppercase M. It's also going to have a type. I believe it's type. Yeah, type we've used. So it's going to have a type. This type is going to be a text, and it's going to have required, which will say true for the time being. Okay, so we're also going to have another one. We'll say it's another object with name, email, with label, email, or we could say enter email, and finally it's going to be of type email. Now for this, required isn't going to be needed, so when required is false, we don't need to input it. We can just leave it out. Now if I save this, actually I'm going to bring the screen into focus first. So this is our website. I'm going to save it, and nice, we've got it to dynamically enter what we've entered in as props. And if we want to make a form with 30 fields or 50 fields or whatever, we're going to be able to do it using this. We can just add more fields into here. We can add the type, we can add the label, we can add the name, and this is great because it means that we can reuse it anywhere on our website.